everybody. Happy Pride. Welcome to Copenhagen 2021 World Pride. We are celebrating World Pride from all over the world today. We have in this breakout session discussion about Pride around Asia. Today with me in the recording are Ram from Pride Circle India, Doreen from Pink Dot Singapore, Sean from Taiwan Tongzhe LGBTQ+ Hotline Association. Welcome. My name is Charlene Liu, and I am representing Shanghai Pride. We are a festival run entirely by volunteers since 2009, with the cooperation of companies, consulates, media, businesses, and many individuals. And the events that we host include arts events, sporting events, parties, social activities, of course. Today, we want to help everybody in the audience know more about what Pride means in Asia, how we celebrate Pride in Asia. So I'm going to ask everybody here to give an introduction about themselves as well as the organizations that they represent. So I'm going to give it up to Doreen Sim from Pink Dot Singapore. Doreen?
Hi everyone. Charlene, thanks for having me here, first of all. So for everyone else, my name is Doreen and my pronouns are she and her. I am a media and entertainment lawyer by profession and an LGBTQ activist by passion. So I'm one of the spokespersons for Pink Dot Singapore. And what we do is we organize Singapore's largest outdoor rally in support of LGBTQ rights every year. So I'll share a little bit more about my organization later as we go into the questions.
Thank you, Doreen. How about you, Sean?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Sean Du, and I'm the director of policy advocacy in Taiwan Tongzhe Hotline Association. So Tongzhe Hotline is an national LGBTQ+ organization since 1998. And I'm a long-term volunteer and then become a staff here. So my work includes the sex education for gay men, and also workplace equality, and also like international affairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And last but not least, Ram.
Hey, thanks, Charlene, for having me. And it's such a wonderful panel to talk about the work happening in Asia. My name is Ram, co-founder of Pride Circle. My pronouns are he, him. At Pride Circle, we effectively help organizations foster LGBT+ inclusion. So we work more with workplaces, education sector, and obviously the LGBT+ community. And our mantra is action for inclusion. So taking steps, building sustainable solutions, which is taking all stakeholders together and leads to long-term impact. Delighted to be here.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome to this panel. I'm really excited to talk about World Pride as well as Asia Pride. Okay, I'd like to, for the sake of the audience, right, can you tell us a little bit more about what's going on in each of the location that you're at? With regards to the LGBTQ community, like what is the current legal status? Maybe we go with Ram first.
So one great thing that happened in 2018 was reading down of Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code. So in a layman's term, being LGBT+ is no longer a crime in India. So that's yay and a big win. And thanks Taiwan for leading the way, because we definitely Taiwan is an example for us, like, hey, an Asian country is doing this. So that's one big win. The other big win was in 2014 when third gender was legally recognized as gender in India by the Supreme Court. Now there is a legislation in place, which is about, so whatever was recommended by the verdict in 2014 about access to education, access to healthcare for trans people. Now there's a Trans Persons Protections Act. But there are some points which are not the best implementation in terms of certification for gender. People have to approach a district magistrate and etc. So there are some problems that's still being worked on. But overall, from a legal perspective, being LGBT plus is no longer a crime. Third gender is a legally recognized gender. But it's just the first step from decriminalization to being just, now next steps would be around marriage equality, protection from discrimination. All that are still a long way to go.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's also it's always work in progress, isn't it? I mean, over here as well, where I am at, I'm based in Shanghai in China, and over here also being LGBTQ is not a crime, and it's also been taken off the mental disease list. But of course, there are a lot of things that needs to be done. And I'm sure, Doreen, you also have something to talk about in terms of the legality of being LGBTQ in Singapore.
Yeah, so when we look to India, it really gives us a lot of hope and inspiration because both Singapore and India were former British colonies. But unfortunately, while 377 was read down in India, it is still very much alive and kicking in Singapore. So the Singapore equivalent is Section 377A. And what it does is criminalize acts of gross indecency between males. So this only affects gay men. There is no equivalent law for females or lesbians, and we hope that that will always be the case. So in Singapore, it's still illegal to be gay. It's not illegal to be lesbian. And as for transgender people, there's no law against transgender people. They are also free to change the gender marker on their national identity card. The problem is, in order to do so, they need to go for gender confirmation surgery. And this surgery is out of reach for many transgender people because it's not covered by the National Insurance Scheme. And there are very few doctors in Singapore who can perform this surgery. So actually, many transgender people go to neighboring countries such as Bangkok or Taiwan to undergo the surgery. The major problem now is that just travel is simply not possible due to COVID. So I think that is one big issue that the transgender community is facing in Singapore. And then as for employment, there are no protections on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. So that's also another major problem for us in Singapore because we have many cases of employment discrimination, and unfortunately, those two characteristics are not protected under the Employment Act.
All right, thank you, Doreen, for giving us a comprehensive update on that. How about in Taiwan, Sean?
Okay, so in Taiwan, so there are laws that prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identities in education, recruitment, and employment. And the law also asks the schools to provide gender education in schools, which also includes LGBT issues. And Domestic Violence Prevention Act also protects same-sex couples. And the same-sex marriage was legalized in Taiwan in 2019. And but however, first we need to congratulate to that. But however, there are still some unsolved issues, like for the transnational same-sex marriage. So right now, Taiwanese can only get married with foreigners whose countries already legalized same-sex marriage. So since Taiwan is the first one in Asia, so that means we cannot marry to other Asian people. Yeah, and also we cannot do co-adoption, and also we are not allowed to use the artificial reproductive technology, which are also very essential to the rainbow families. And like Singapore, so transgender people can change their sex on legal documents, but only after they do gender reassignment surgery, and they have to pay by themselves.
All right, thank you so much. I think we have seen that and found out that there is actually a lot of progress being done in the region, but again, there is still a long way to go. I'm sure it's also the same everywhere around the world. Okay. Since the topic is about pride in Asia, right? Let's go back to this question. You know, when we say pride, a lot of people will automatically think about parties and parades on the streets. but most of us, we don't have that, right? So maybe you can tell a little bit more about what we do in Asia, where you're at, and what pride means in Asia. Let's go with Doreen. You want to start first?
Sure. I think when you look at the Western examples of pride, what you are really seeing is a celebration of equality. And we are nowhere near that in Singapore and for many other countries in Asia. So for us in Singapore, pride is really a celebration of inclusion. We know from feedback received from Pink Dot participants, they've told us that the annual Pink Dot rally is really the only day in a year that they can come out of the closet and truly be themselves. So pride is actually for us in Singapore quite a sobering reminder that for us LGBTQ activists, there is still a very long way to go, and there's so much more work that needs to be done. So we don't have those wild parties. Nobody is topless. Nobody is wearing nipple tassels. But what we do have is a very interesting and homegrown concept where we gather people and we ask them to wear pink. So I'm actually wearing the Pink Dot shirt from a couple of years ago. We get them together in this park, which is the only area for free speech in Singapore. And at a certain time, so we have concerts, we have music, we have singing, we have speeches. And at a certain time, we shout at them and we say, like, everybody come together to make Pink Dot. If it's in the night, we will raise our torchlights and turn it on. So you can see that behind me. And the idea is that the growing size of the dot will symbolize the growing acceptance of LGBTQ people in Singapore.
Actually, can we stay on this topic about Pink Dot for a while, Doreen? Because
Sure.
I mean, I know how it came about, right, Pink Dot, but please tell the audience, like, how did the concept come about and why that particular park?
Yeah, so for Singapore, basically there's no freedom of speech in Singapore. If you want to have a speech in support of a cause, anything, a speech, a demonstration, a procession, or a rally, or whatever, you can only do it without a permit in this particular park in the Central Business District. Outside of this park, you need to get a permit, and we all know that it's impossible to get a permit outside a park. So basically, all our activities are confined to this park. And back this park was actually set up a long time ago, but the rules were so strict that hardly anybody used it. And then in 2009, the rules were relaxed. So instead of applying and waiting for approval, all you need to do is just apply and abide by certain rules. So at that point in time, something like this had never been done in Singapore before. And we have to actually remember that LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, was not even mentioned in the newspapers. That's how non-inclusive Singapore was back then. So when we decided to do this, we had to be very careful and alive to the local sensitivities. And that's why we couldn't import the idea of the Western pride wholesale into Singapore. So what we did first was to choose a color. And the color that we settled on was pink, because it's the color of red and white, our national flag mixed together. And it's also the color of our national identity card. So then we had a color, and now we needed an activity. So if you look at pride parades, they are really processions where you start at point A and then you march to point B. Well, we couldn't have that in Singapore because it's a tiny park and you can't march anywhere. You just like end up going around in circles. So then the activity we decided on was just to get everyone together and take that aerial photograph. So we did that every year, and then the dot grew in size from 2,500 people the first year to 5,000, 10,000, and subsequently we filled out the whole park. Yeah, so that's how we started.
That's amazing. But then also with COVID, and how did you overcome getting Pink Dot together with COVID?
COVID threw a major spanner in the works, and we had to plan for so many different scenarios each year, because you think like, oh, you know, this year, this month, maybe like things will change for the better, and then we can go back to having an outdoor event, and then we'll plan for an outdoor event, and then things will take a turn for the worse, and then we will be like, okay, now we have to pivot to a virtual event. And it's really no joke, because people think that, oh, it's very easy to have a virtual event, just have a concert and then like put together a few videos. It's really not. And also you have to remember that the COVID safe management measures also apply to filming. So then we had this situation where your cast and crew were limited in size. They had to wear masks. They had to stand 1 meter apart from each other. It's really funny because then like we had a pink 1 meter stick, and we were just going around using this stick to make sure that people were like 1 meter apart from each other. Yeah, but after many sleepless nights and working around the clock, we managed to pull it off from in 2020 and then in 2021.
Well, congratulations. It looks amazing. The color is always very appealing, especially at night. I participated at Pink Dot a few years ago. I think it was 2017 or something. And I was totally amazed. You know, it is really electrifying just to be there. And the people who are supporting is just so heartwarming. I mean, the feeling is just amazing. Thank you, Dari. We'll go back more to you later about Pink Dot. Ram, you know, I've never been to India. So and it's a big country. How is it like celebrating Pride?
Pride has become a really big thing in India right now. I think the first Pride March in India happened way back in 1999 in the city of Kolkata. Now we definitely have a lot of Pride marches and processions, which is happening not just in major cities, the metros, but also in tier 2 cities. Like some of the biggest prides happens in Mumbai with 50,000 plus people coming in, where a lot of allies, and now we're seeing schools and colleges also participate in it, workplaces participate in it. The Pride in India, Pride marches are two things. One is obviously celebration that there has been progress and there's a day to be yourself and claim the public spaces the way you are. And the other thing is also protest about still there's so much more that needs to be done in terms of non-discrimination policies, affirmative space, safe spaces for trans people, and all of that. The other aspect of Pride is also self-affirmation in workplaces. So more and more companies are engaging, and we're seeing affirmative hiring and process like that. And definitely we do parties as well, because I think there are multiple roads to inclusion. The end goal is inclusion, and party is definitely one way to do it. So I would be really the Pride has really grown to tier 2 cities where we would have not heard of people talk about LGBT plus, but like small places also have their own mini prides. So it's definitely mushrooming, and more people are getting to know about this community, and better press coverage, better reportage, better language, all of that.
Oh, that's great. Just now you talked about businesses being more inclusive now, right? And I know that your work with Pride Circle India is about that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, what you do, what Pride Circle does?
Absolutely. So Pride Circle works in 3 areas. One is about corporate advocacy, helping companies foster LGBT plus inclusion. So help them with the policies and benefits, language, supporting with ERGs and everything else around that. The second space is helping companies hire LGBT plus talent, either through internships or hiring people for full-time roles. So we're also known for RISE, Reimagining Inclusion for Social Equity. It became India's first ever LGBT plus exclusive job fair. And this will be the 3rd year. The one which we concluded this year was on 8th of May. Until now, we have 100 plus job offers through that. So we are really seeing companies embrace it and going out and really taking steps, which is beyond the checklist, which is beyond just changing your logo in Pride Month, but actually taking steps on the ground. Third piece is about working with the education sector. We recently published a report with BCG and IIM Ahmedabad, which was called about fostering pride in higher education. And we found that 83% of LGBT plus students had little or no support. So we're just trying to build in those data points, those business cases, and also the steps to make a difference. How do you really go from point A to point B, and helping both the community and the organizations to come together, helping community with skill building programs, with hackathons, and more, so that there are more and more opportunities for people to be themselves and get gainful employment based on the skill set.
Sounds great, Ram. And then, so are you also considered to be a part of Pride where you're at with this work?
As part of Pride, as in, could you expand that?
Well, okay, so for us, it's we put all the different events together, right? Whether it's a business events, connecting companies, connecting job seekers, and we also have our social events like parties. Do you consider this as also part of celebrating Pride, the work that you do?
Absolutely, absolutely. Pride is about destigmatizing LGBT plus identities, is about being more confident, being self-affirmative, and claiming space. We have been told that you deserve less, you should not come out at workplace. Why is this being discussed? And it's all Pride is all about. Hey, I deserve an equal space and a safe and inclusive space for everything, and I deserve to be celebrated. My partner, my love, my family, all needs to be celebrated, and that is Pride to us. So every space LGBT plus people occupy needs to be safe and inclusive, and that is Pride.
Oh yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Ram. All right, Sean, you know, I have been to Taiwan and celebrated the Pride there in 2018. So, I mean, this is my first time walking.
How was it?
It was so good. Again, the feeling is just, I cannot describe it. I actually walked and then, but it was so far that I had to jump on a truck. So I kind of cheated. I jumped on a truck and started, you know, doing the whole route. So tell us how this started and how, besides parades, right? How do you celebrate Pride?
Okay, so in Taiwan, the first Pride was in Taipei in 2003, and I was a volunteer at that time. And I remember that before the Pride, we are really worried that nobody will come because people are worried about like coming out or being shot by the cameras. But eventually, there are like around 1,000 people coming, and with the time goes, and now the biggest Pride in Taiwan is still in Taipei, and like in 2019 there were like more than 200,000 participants. Yeah, and so yeah, it's quite big in Taipei. And I must say that it's also great that not only in Taipei but in different areas. Although Taiwan is like a small island, but there are different prides and festivals in different cities and counties in Taiwan. So and the prides in Taiwan are hosted by LGBTQ plus NGOs and groups, and the subjects are the LGBTQ plus communities and allies. So recently, there are more and more corporates and also some political parties join the Pride. And it's more related to movements and less commercial. Although now, and there are also like more corporates want to sponsor the Pride. And the Pride offers a space for people with different identities and expressions to be themselves, a platform for various issues and topics related to LGBTQ communities to be presented, and an opportunity for the society to see LGBTQ plus people and allies. So the Pride in Taiwan, I think another trait for the Pride in Taiwan is that it's also connect with other social movement groups, such as like environmental protection, immigrant workers, sex workers, anti-death penalties. Because in Taiwan, the LGBTQ movement connected with other social movement because we are all small and together we can make each other stronger.
I'd like to just add on to something that Sean said. So Sean mentioned that people were afraid of coming at first because they were afraid of being caught on camera. And that's exactly the situation that we faced in Singapore. Because when we were creating this event, there was a concern that people won't come because if you come means you are gay, and then if I see you there, it means you are gay and
guilty by association.
Yes, so that's why when we designed the first Pink Dot, we deliberately reached out to the straight allies as well. So we said like, oh, if you care about LGBT inclusion, if you care about equal rights, come to this event. It doesn't matter if you are straight or gay, you just have to care about this event. And really, this is the importance and the power of having allies. And so now when people go to Pink Dot, it doesn't mean that you are LGBT. You could very well be an ally. And that eventually made Pink Dot a lot more attractive and easier for LGBT people who are in the closet to come to our event.
Can I also Yeah, sorry. Can I also do some advertisement for our Pride? For the biggest Pride in Taipei, it's always the last Saturday in October. And for the previous 2 years, actually, my organization, we also start the Taiwan Transgender March, which is a smaller Pride for transgender and allies. And for the last 2 years, there are also more than 1,000 and like 300 people attending. So I hope that this year we can also hold this Pride in person and welcome everyone. For the Transgender March is the last night before the biggest Pride. So if you come to Taiwan, you can attend it like 2 events.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So since we're doing advertising also, I want to add in something. I helped to create an event called Asia Rainbow Ride. Actually, in Taipei, and it's around Pride season over there. So, anybody who is available to travel at that time, join us. I'm so glad that you talked about how when we first started Pride, also in Shanghai, right? About the no photos. People were so afraid people won't come because they don't want to be photographed. But fast forward to today, if you don't photograph people, they will come up to you and say, "Hey, I want my photograph to be taken. Why aren't you taking my photo? Why are you taking photos of the other guy over there?" So it's I think we have seen change. And it's good. It's good that more people are becoming more visible. But Pride is also a celebration not only of the LGBTQ community, it's also for the allies as well. I always get during Pride parties, like the most allies come to all our Pride parties every year because it's time to celebrate, it's time to have fun. And it's good. Allyship is so great. And that's why the visibility for not only LGBTQ is important, but also for allies as well. Yeah, so I'm gonna bring the discussion. Oh yes,
totally agree with that. I personally participated in Pride marches with a mask on, not because of COVID, but because I didn't want to be identified. People should not get to know. And then that obviously has changed now. And I've seen so many more people who don't wear masks these days, and so many more young Gen Z people who are out there. And it's so amazing to see that they have the confidence at an age where we were still struggling to come to terms with our sexuality. So I definitely believe that we are going in the right direction, and more people have safer spaces today.
Yeah, it's also about visibility and awareness, having prides. And it doesn't really matter whether we are on the streets or doing indoor events, right? The thing is about getting the word out there, getting the support, getting the network. So back to more a serious discussion, right? So in each of your region or where you're at, what is the most pressing issue that needs to be addressed for the community? And how are we going about doing it? Who is doing it? And what are the challenges? Maybe Ram, you can talk about a little bit more about that too first.
A lot of challenges. I think we're just scratching the surface. Like just yesterday, I got to know of a trans person whose SRS, gender affirmation surgery, was really botched up, and they actually died by suicide. And the partner also died by suicide because of that. So access to healthcare, access to education, access to shelter, all of this is very important because a lot of trans people run away from homes because they're so toxic and they have nowhere to go. So access to shelter, healthcare, education, definitely important that educational spaces become safe. There's gender neutrality now. We are seeing more and more people who identify as gender fluid, gender non-binary. It's important that that awareness is brought in the school education system as well. Then it comes to the aspect of employment, a non-discriminatory workplace where people are not judged for the sexuality or gender, but they're able to work for what skill set they have to offer. And that's a very key important space where there should be legislation which is around protection from discrimination, because livelihood is such an important aspect of pride. If I'm not able to earn for myself and not able to take care of myself, that dependency will really impact how much my self-worth is for myself and the aspect of pride. So I think livelihood is really, really important when it comes to self-affirmation for an individual. Yeah, I would say those are the very key concerns, but there are multiple more.
Of course, it's a long list of things that needs to be done, and not enough time and not enough resources yet. Well, things hopefully will improve. Sean, what about in Taiwan? What are the pressing topics or issues that need to be addressed?
Okay, so first thing I must say that although I say that there are some progressive laws in Taiwan, but however, I think the implementation are still insufficient. So like for gender education, although we already have gender education since 2004, and right now our Minister of Education show a supportive attitude, but the education resources for the formal education and training for teachers are insufficient. This is just like and some teachers are not familiar with LGBTQ issues, and there are only like few contents about LGBT in the textbooks, and some teachers will skip those parts. And for teenagers, LGBT teenagers, they are lack of resources, like formal resources in schools. So this is just an example, so that we have this kind of progressive law, but the implementation is insufficient. And I must say that in Taiwan, for the LGBTQ communities, transgender people are the most marginalized community within all the communities, and the whole society are still not familiar with transgender people and their social situations. And like only a small number of schools have gender neutral restrooms, and it's also hard for transgender people to apply for jobs. Although I know I say that there's a law prohibit the discrimination when you apply for a job, but the bosses are not that stupid. They won't say that it's because of your gender identity or your appearance, but they will find other ways to say that, yeah, so to reject you. So I must say that we have some protecting laws, but there's still a gap for the society and culture to keep up. And also, as you all know, that Taiwan legalized same-sex marriage, and for the past few years, we really try very hard to do this, and also with a lot of support. But also, I must say that with some support, with some political parties and some politicians, but the LGBT issues also become like a political issues. And so, but in Taiwan, the biggest two political parties are conflict with each other because of historical and political reasons. And these conflicts may narrow the space for dialogues. So if one party is more supportive for LGBT, the other party may more close to the other part, the counterpart. So that's not what we want to see. We want all parties will be more LGBT friendly and supportive. And also, although Taiwan, most of us are not non-religious or like Buddhism or Taoism, but we still have some anti-LGBTQ religious groups, basically some fundamental Christian and Catholic groups. And although they are only like small amount of people, but they are church-based, which means that they are rich. So that's they like for the marriage equality movement, these are the groups that fight against same-sex marriage, fight against LGBT groups the most, and because they are rich, so they can easily to buy like TV commercials, to buy like front page ads on like front page of newspapers, to do advertisement, to share a lot of like fake information about LGBTQ. So for Taiwan, every 2 years we will have like a regional or a national elections, and also with like referendums. So we are worried that maybe for the next election, LGBTQ issues might be another issues that be discussed in this way. So that is what we are still need to pay attention to.
Yeah, still work in progress again as well. Sean, tell us a little bit more about Taiwan Tongzhi Hotline Association.
Oh yeah, so as I say that Taiwan Tongzhihanlai Association was founded in 1998. So we started to provide telephone consultation to LGBTQ people and their family members in Taiwan. And later we developed different kinds of work just to feed the need for LGBTQ communities. So we provide like direct services, community services to LGBTQ people and their family members. And also we provide a lot of social education in schools and to some professionals like social workers, therapists whose clients might be LGBTQ. And also recently we provide like education to some civil servants, because as you know that now we passed the same-sex marriage. So a lot of policies are related to same-sex people and LGBTQ people, but many civil servants are not familiar with the LGBTQ communities. And also recently, we provide a lot of education in the corporates, want to make the workplace more LGBT friendly, because I must say that although many LGBTQ people, they come out on campus, but when they graduate, when they go to work, they are back to the closet again. So based on our research in last year, so we just found out that like for LGBTQ employees, there are only like 55% of the participants in our survey that come out to some colleagues, a small number of colleagues in the workplace. And if it goes to like come out to your supervisors or your bosses, the number just dropped down to only 30%. Yeah, and there's still not enough like institutions and regulations about LGBT friendly in the workplace. Also, and also another another aspect that we do is for the advocacy work, like the marriage equality movement, and also some other LGBTQ issues, and some like HIV related issues. So that's our main work. And recently, we just try very hard to connect with activists and groups around the world, especially in Asia countries. So we think that it's great that for Taiwan, because Taiwan, you know that we have a very special international status. So that's it's hard for us to, you know, do some like international relations with other countries. But for LGBT issues, we find that actually that's a good area that we can connect it with others more. So recently we just connect with, especially with groups in Asian countries.
Yeah, I'm gonna later on ask everybody about how we're gonna do better in terms of cross borders and cross-organization collaboration. Doreen, would you like to talk about what is the most pressing issue right now in Singapore? I mean, I know there are a lot. I used to live there.
I think this section is really depressing. So instead of talking about the laws, I'll change it up and I'll tell stories about what happened recently. So in Singapore, we have a few instances of rainbow flag hating going on. During Pride Month, the salad shop is called Small, S-M-O-L, and is run by a lesbian owner. She put a little rainbow pride flag on the cashier stand. And this guy walked past and asked her, like, what is it about? And she said, oh, it's to support the LGBTQ community. And he said, like, something like, you are going to destroy Singapore and you're going to bring the whole country to ruin. And then he took the flag and he threw it at her. And she was so shocked and affected and stunned by what happened. And then in another situation, someone hung a pride flag outside her apartment. And I think she heard a loud bang. And when she went over to see what happened, she saw that the flag had fallen off to the ground. So she went down, picked it up, and put it back up. And then it happened again, and this time she saw some teenagers running away. So those two people were eventually caught. But the moral of the story that can be discerned from this is that discrimination is very much alive and well, and it is because of Section 377A. So even though the government tells us that, oh, we won't proactively enforce Section 377A, all it means is that the gay men are not being actively prosecuted in court under this section. However, what it does is that instead it gives the wider community, general population, a license to discriminate. And I'm sure if you ask the people who did the flag hating, the pride flag hating, they will say, oh yeah, because it's illegal to be gay in Singapore. That's why they feel emboldened to do this. Yeah. So definitely, first off, we have to repeal Section 377A. And then second, the second most pressing thing is that we need to remove the discriminatory media censorship guidelines that we have in Singapore. So under our censorship codes for TV, radio, and advertisements, they cannot have positive portrayals of LGBTQ people. And so what this means is that if you're someone from the older generation and you're consuming a lot of mainstream media, you will be very ignorant and even prejudiced against the LGBTQ community. And I think a story that I'd like to share is, I think last year, Channel 8, which is our local free-to-air Chinese television station, they had a program in which they featured a male basketball coach who acted effeminately. So that means, i.e. he's gay. He's a pedophile with sexually transmitted diseases, and he preyed on the young boys in his team. So when that came out and that happened, Pink Dot was actually taken by surprise, because we had many people from the general Singapore population writing in to say, how can you perpetuate such stereotypes and prejudices? Like, this is not the way that the state broadcaster should be going. So Pink Dot had nothing to do with that, and we're quite happy to see people say that this is unacceptable now. And the third thing I would say that we really need right now is more inclusion in schools. So I find it really amazing when Ram says that he can go in and he can talk to schools. We can't do that at all in Singapore. At most, we can only go in and talk to the international schools. But for public schools under the Ministry of Education, it is a strict no-no, and it's very taboo to talk about LGBTQ issues in Singapore. And actually, in fact, what the schools teach is that it's illegal to be gay. They teach Section 377A and they leave it there as that. They don't say like you shouldn't discriminate, it's okay to be LGBTQ. They just mention 377A and then they let the kids come to their own conclusions. So, and something that happened in Singapore recently and which really, really broke my heart is that some teenager went on Reddit to share their experience about being a transgender student in Singapore, and it was horrifying. Basically, in Singapore, the transgender students need to go for gender confirmation surgery before they can change their gender marker, and just so that they can wear the uniform that matches their gender expression. So that's a lot of, frankly, life-changing and dangerous and expensive things to go through just to be able to wear the uniform that matches your gender expression. So there were a bunch of teenagers who came out with their stories and said like, oh yeah, they had to take go for this surgery just so that they could wear the correct school uniform. And then subsequently, 3 people protested outside the Ministry of Education, and they were brought away and arrested by the police. So that's where we are now. It's really unfortunate. And I would say lastly, the most important thing that we need to do right now is to allow LGBT NGOs to be registered as societies and charities. So if the government is not going to help ourselves, we need to help ourselves. And in order to do that, we need to be able to set up bank accounts, to be able to enter into contracts. And we can't really do that if we are not registered as a legal entity. Yeah, so that's the situation that we face in Singapore, and a roundup of the most urgent things that we need to do right now.
Well, you certainly have a top 3 list on that. Okay, since you were talking a little bit about how people are being creative and moving on, right? And registering, right? I know that a few years back, foreign-owned companies are not allowed to participate in Pink Dot. How has that gone about? Like, any progress, any other ways that companies can support the community in Singapore instead of just being at Pink Dot?
Sure. Maybe I'll give a little bit of context about how that came about. So every year around June, we get a lot of pushback. I mean, we have, it's like the laws of physics, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So we have Pink Dot, and then we have movements that push back against Pink Dot. And one particular year, they cited the issue of foreign intervention. And why they said that was because there were MNCs who were sponsors of Pink Dot. It didn't matter that the MNCs were incorporated in Singapore, hired thousands of Singaporeans, and all they did was to contribute money. Pink Dot is 100% organized by Singapore citizens. All of that didn't matter. So that was the year 2016. And what the government did then was to amend the Public Order Act. And so it did a few things with these amendments. First, foreigners could no longer come into Pink Dot. So even if, what it meant for same-sex couples is that if one of them was a foreigner, that person couldn't come to Pink Dot. And that was really heartbreaking because you see pictures of couples holding hands across the barricades. That image is really just not a nice image. And second, what the amendments did was to make it, to make sponsorship or organization of such events limited to Singapore-controlled entities. So if you were a company, if you were individual, you need to be a Singapore citizen. And if you are a company, you need to be 51% or more owned by Singapore citizens in order to contribute to Pink Dot. And what that meant was that in 2016, between the years 2016 and 17, we lost 13 out of our 18 corporate sponsors because 13 were MNCs. And that was a huge hit for us because with the 5 remaining sponsors, we couldn't go on with the event next year. So that's when we pivoted. So if we can't get funding from the MNCs, then we will get funding from the local small and medium enterprises, the local SMEs. And we were really happy because the year we pivoted, a total of 120 local sponsors signed up. And that was really amazing because we gone from being really worried about the event to being overwhelmed by this amazing show of support. And it really warmed the cockles of our heart because it was really nice seeing all these local companies stand up and support LGBT rights in Singapore.
Yeah, okay. So, there is progress. Sometimes, well, for us here, we always, every year we will have some setbacks, right? Whether it's social media accounts being shut down or venues being shut down, we couldn't move on. But then every time we have to be more creative on how to reach out, how to continue our initiatives, how to continue our events. So on that happier note, I want to ask Ram this question, right? Section 377, it caused a huge celebration around the world. How did that come about? Like, could you summarize it a bit? Because it's done, but how? I'm sure there's a long process, and I'm sure there were so many challenges going on before we had that verdict.
It's a really long and very, very arduous process, I would say. So it came to India in 1860, the Section 377, and multiple NGOs have kind of filed petitions against it. There was a point when it was read down by the Delhi High Court in 2009. Then it was again repetitioned against by religious groups, and again it was decriminalized back in 2013. Then there was a review petition, and then a curative petition, and then finally 2018 it was decriminalized for good. So it has been a really, really long legal battle where a lot of people have suffered because of this. People have been, and more than actual like legal action against people for violation of Section 377, it has been used to blackmail the community and extort money from gay people, stuff like that. So the legal battle has been insanely long and has only been possible because of the sustained, continued efforts from the community and allies. So don't lose hope, Dareen. We will get there in Singapore as well, but just want to say that it takes a lot of work. And hence, while this is a great step to celebrate, we also really believe that this is just the first step. It's just decriminalization. There is a much long road ahead.
Yep. Well, we have all of you amazing leaders in the community to help us move forward. I'm really happy to be in the midst of such amazing people. Okay, last but not least, right? Since this is Copenhagen 2021 World Pride, how can we regionally as well as internationally be more effective in terms of our collaboration, in terms of helping our LGBTQ community at where we are at? Any suggestions? Anybody?
Well, maybe I'll share. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
How India has helped us. So 2018, India read down 377, and then that sparked a major movement in Singapore. So one of our former ambassador at large, somebody shared the article on India reading down 377, and then in the comments, somebody said Singapore should try should also file a challenge. And then the ambassador said Singapore should file a challenge. And then someone said, yeah, we did, sir, and we failed. And then the ambassador said, try again. So then hashtag try again started trending over the next few days. And that got three plaintiffs, three gay men from Singapore. They filed fresh constitutional challenges against Section 377A. And how we learned from India was that the lawyers who were representing the men reached out to the lawyers who did the case in India, and they shared their experiences about how they crafted the arguments, why they crafted it that way, what kind of what's the history behind 377, and also that is regional collaboration. But internationally, the lawyers in Singapore also reached out to lawyers in the UK to get the historical documents back from the 1900s release, so we could learn about the history of Section 377A in Singapore. So I think that's one major way that we have collaborated. But also separately, we also have, I think other NGOs in Singapore have collaborated in terms of translation. And I feel like this is very important in Singapore because, as I mentioned, because of media censorship, we generally find it very hard to get to the older generation in Singapore because they consume traditional media, and LGBT NGOs cannot get on that space. And then if we try to do other forms of outreach, we are hindered by our language abilities because most of us speak English as our first language. Honestly, I could not do this interview in Chinese, which means that I can't conduct a webinar or a presentation in Chinese to parents or grandparents of LGBT children. So I think other NGOs have reached out to organizations overseas for help with translation. And that really helps us to reach out to the other communities in Singapore.
Thank you, Doreen. Ram, you wanted to say something earlier on.
So like, for instance, as an example, even for Section 377 battle, it was not just lawyers and NGOs, there were individuals, there were parents, there were education institutions, all collaborated to give different aspects of how this hinders, even in terms of relief from HIV/AIDS. That relief work is also impacted because of Section 377. So I think as various participants who are impacted coming together the same way, we should definitely come together as organizations to support each other through this, because we are in a legally different space where there are laws that prohibit some of the work we do. So that's definitely there. Bring more visibility to this topic and also spotlight the good work that is happening in our region. It's not necessarily has to be a Western example, because sometimes there's also guilty by association. What you talked about coming to Pride is also like, oh, this is a Western thing, this is not our culture, this is not our people kind of a thing. So I think it's when we spotlight, and we definitely are really happy when Taiwan went ahead with same-sex marriage, because it gives us hope that an Asian country has done it, and it's an example closer home. And then definitely there's a virtual world, so there's a lot of room where we can collaborate as organizations, lead education and awareness campaigns to spotlight more voices where other people in this region see as local people, local voices, relatable voices who are talking about LGBT plus inclusion, not someone who is not part of our culture. I think that is a big space of building larger awareness in this region and learning from each other and sharing programs. Like, for instance, we did the Ally Challenge this year. It's again gamification of allyship, where we had people from 52 countries participate. And concepts of allyship are universal. So there's definitely scope to do so much more together.
Yeah, you know, the great thing about technology, it has helped us really to connect all the prides around the world and around the region as well. I'm really happy. For a few years, Shanghai Pride actually hosted some of the organizations from around the region to come and share and network. I think we don't do that enough. I think we should do definitely more. Being online now virtually, it's a great opportunity. I mean, we were supposed to be in Copenhagen this year for the World Pride, but because of the pandemic, we're not being, we can't go there. Having this panel is already amazing, connecting everyone to connecting everyone to Asia right now, finding out what's going on. So Sean, I'm giving you the last word on collaborating among regions and also internationally.
Yeah, so I must say that actually for the marriage equality movement in Taiwan, we get a lot support from international organizations and also like groups in other Asian countries, other countries, including Asian countries. So, and we also learn a lot of experiences from like countries that like previously legalized same-sex marriage, like Australia, like the US. So I must say that it's really helped us to like hold this big movement with a lot of support internationally. So that's also like for our experiences, we also learn a lot. Like we have some good experiences. We also have some, you know, some bad experiences. I think that those are all the things that we can share to other countries, and that we can share the like work experiences and good practice challenges and connect with each other. So I think we can make our our movement stronger. So and especially in Asia, I know that in different sub-regions, we have some cultural similarities, like for like for Singapore and Taiwan. So for the family coming out issues, actually, I think because we are like Chinese cultural, so I think for how we see parents, how our relationship with parents, I think must be similar. So just like you say that, I think we can find a way to connect it more.
Yeah, well, there you have it, folks. For those of you joining in, thank you so much. As you know, Pride is celebrated all around the world, including Asia. At every region, there is something happening. There are LGBTQ people everywhere in the world. If you are traveling, if you are able to travel in the future, reach out to different organizations, help out if you can, network with them, share with them your stories. If you need help, you can also come to all of us here with social media and email. We're very easily found. There is still a lot of work to be done for the LGBTQ community, despite all the progress that we have made so far. Awareness is still a big part that we need to do, because not enough people know about LGBTQ. Some people think that we don't exist, but we do. Allies also exist. We need to go get the word out there. We need to have more support in terms of anti-discrimination policies, equal benefits, etc. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Ramkrishna from Pride Circle India. Thank you, Doreen Sim from Pink Dot Singapore. Thank you, Sean Du from Taiwan Tongzhe Hotline Association. I am Charlene Liu from Shanghai Pride.